sports medicine Sitzung, aber seit mein nach meinem MPA für National Public Health Diplom ein neues Schwerpunkt ist Vorurteile. So, vielleicht ist ein Überblick von 10.000 Meter nicht aus USA. So, I lived in Palo Alto 8 years ago. You guys invited me to become a lifetime member, so thank you. So I noticed a lot of things, and we all have bathrooms for public facilities. But how come there's never a line in the men's bathroom, and there's always a line for the women's bathroom? So it's equal, we both have bathrooms, but it's not equitable because of wait time. I don't like having to wait for my wife. So this is a slide I had for my MPH, and people talk about change, but they don't want to do anything about it. Achilles tendon is my specialty. Everybody knows Achilles tendon has a weakness. There's weakness in our care for patients, and there's weakness on how we perceive the people who provide the care, including women. So women are not offered treatment at the same level as men for Achilles tendon rupture. There's a lot of other examples of this, not only in orthopedics, but other health problems that women don't get addressed. And it affects them and the doctors who provide the care for them. This is about research in orthopedics, how there's inequality for females who want to do research in orthopedics. We all have biases. I benefit from bias because I practice in my hometown. People remember me as probably a decent runner, a decent student, and they want to have patients see me, and they trust me. But I have biases. I might have failed some patients based on my bias, and we all have to realize that we have these biases and how it affects patients and people. One of the first things is for female surgeons is people don't think they're as good as male surgeons. Sometimes they don't realize they're a surgeon, and that oftentimes affects how you get things like support staff, operating room time. So these are factors just on bias against women doctors, particularly surgeons. And we all have, again, biases, and some are unconscious. We may not go outside in the dark because we might think something might happen to us. So these are all biases that are in our mind. And sometimes these things are ingrained in people, and it takes a while to change. And people, like my daughter's an orthopedist, but when she was doing her training, a lot of people probably thought she was a nurse, and I'll show you why. And so there's also this group thing where if you have a lot of people who think the same, they keep picking and thinking and doing the same thing. And that cycle has to be broken. I call it unconscious submission. It's one of the reasons why I left my clinic. I didn't want to be in a cult. There's some good things about Germany and your culture. You've had a female leader for your whole country, and you've had female leaders in your group. People think of California being a very liberal place. We've never had a female governor. Never, right? And I think that sort of the open-mindedness may have come from the person who started the organization, Kai Owens, because he learned from whoever was doing foot surgery, and he learned from podiatrists like myself, or he probably didn't learn much from me, but he was willing to learn from whoever was doing the thing. So he eliminated the bias that a lot of American orthopedists have against podiatrists. And then your group, it strives to educate everybody who treats foot and ankle So there are a lot of good things about your culture. The other thing is that you guys are used to having training programs and focused training, and in America we don't have that. You have training schools, trade schools. The other thing is that in your culture for residency training, you can start and finish in different times. In America, you have to start July 1 and finish June 30th. And if you have a baby, you can only take 6 weeks off. And they don't save your job. And if you miss, you have to miss a year. You can't. Sometimes you can start halfway through. So you have good things in your culture. I started out, in high school, being interested in psychology. My daughter, she says like chooses like. This is one of my high school teachers. If you ever come to Palo Alto, that's one of the best Italian restaurants in the country. Jay's been there. And so Tara's, my daughter's an orthopedist, and she says like chooses like. And I figured this out a long time ago. I did a study. My very first research project was asking 5-year-olds to choose out of 3 blocks. You have 3 blocks, and you have to pick 2 to keep and 1 to eliminate. And I gave them either 2 black blocks and 1 white block, or 2 white blocks and 1 black block. And what do you think 5-year-olds in America chose? When you're learning as a 5-year-old, you learn how to pick what looks similar. So both 5-year-old boys and 5-year-old girls both picked 2 of the same color. Didn't matter if they chose 2 white or 2 black. But then I also went to my high school teacher's class. I was a pretty good student, so she let me come back, and I said, I'll do the same thing to the 15-year-olds. And what do you think 15-year-old girls did? They started to pick 1 of each because they wanted to try to equalize it. So 1 of each color. But what do you think 15-year-old boys did? They still kept picking the same colored blocks. And so in America, in orthopedics, it's overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly white male. In Germany, your numbers are a little bit better, but still you have a small number of head departments that are male. This is a German podiatry residency director, and these are his residents behind him. And you can see he has quite a bit of diversity. This is Tara's program in Louisiana. And tomorrow I'll tell you on the abstract. And so she said, like chooses like. And this is one of the articles I read in my MPH that was really impactful to me, because in Europe, doctors and nurses bias is based on country of origin. So I know Germans don't trust Eastern Europeans. UK people like Indians but don't trust Pakistanis. We're the same people. But in America, the doctors and nurses bias is on skin color. Very simple. And you've probably seen this with politics. In Europe, you have a lot more percentage of females that are orthopedists. Estonia has the highest. It had a female president. A lot of barriers for females in American orthopedics. This is actually in Canadian orthopedics. And so this leads into what I call sham peer review, or I didn't coin the term, but sham or shine. It's basically something that's made up. So if something happens to a patient, and it's normal to have this happen to a patient, but you get asked to meet with the chief of the department, why did this happen? And you're saying, it happens to every single surgeon, 3% of the time. This happened to me. I had an Achilles suture reaction, and they called me on the carpet for a suture reaction. That's my most read paper, 6,000 people in ResearchGate, and it's 3% of the time. I got a suture granuloma, and they asked why this happened. Did you give me antibiotics before? Yes, I did. It happened. But if you're the only person in the room that's the minority, in my case brown, in your case female, then this is a problem. This is a sham. They're put on unnecessarily because they're trying to isolate you. And a lot of these things are traumatic, not only to your standing, but your license or your job. And so you have to realize this is happening. And this is what they call the corporate medical playbook. There's a doctor who
jealousy, if you are a minority and you're successful, then people sometimes jealous people try to find these things and create sham peer review. So I'm trying to tell you how to be aware of this. And these things cause microaggressions or health problems because you constantly have to look behind your shoulder, not get stabbed in the back. And these things affect people in America, particularly people of my color, because supposedly in America, if you have higher income, higher education, you have less health problems. But my culture has the highest amount of health problems. And then if you have genetic predisposition to heart disease and you have more stress, these stresses turn this on. Microaggressions affect surgeons, particularly females with fertility. And you have, Mira just showed that women surgeons have sometimes less volume, but they have lower complications, and they recognize complications sooner. And so they are better at, in general, the outcomes, but it's still they're male-dominated professions. And she said only 5% of leaders are male, and a lot of women are leaving their jobs. I have a new article that just came out in American Journal of Surgery about this. And unfortunately, again, just like the cable phenomenon, there's a queen bee phenomenon where women fought so hard to get to the top, and they had it hard, so they try to make it hard for all the other women, and that's not good. I mean, that's basically mobbing, right? So you have to think more of this. We saw this at the tour yesterday, and try to help people and put other people in your position too to help. There's a famous book about a guy who talked about imposter syndrome. So in America, there's a SAT exam. If you tell girls before they took the math test, girls are not good at math, they will score about 20% lower on the test if you tell them beforehand. And so the same thing happens to minorities who get into college because of affirmative action or whatever. If you tell them, well, you're only here because you have this color skin, they will fail more likely. So that's called imposter syndrome. And again, these threats cause health problems and stress, and then you pay a tax for being in the situation. So you have to realize that the 1,000 cuts does cause health problems. So wrapping it up, we think of equality, but you don't want equality. You want equity. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And this is what you have to work on and be the change. And so just because you had it good, you need to try to make it better. Not necessarily easier, but I say raising kids the same way. You don't make it easier for your children, you make it better for your children. And you look for equity, not equality. And you have to put the decision makers, you have to make the decision makers more representative of the people that are providing the service. So you need to make it so you pick more minorities, more women in positions of decision making. That's very important. And you have to understand your own unconscious bias and understand that
und habe halt überlegt, was können wir Gender und Bias mit KI besprechen, und ich wollte dann untersuchen und recherchieren, wie, quasi welche Verzerrungen, welche Biases wir haben, wenn wir genau. Das erste, was ich gemacht habe, ich habe ChatGPT gesagt, das ist mein Thema vom Vortrag für den Fußkongress, machen wir ein Bild. Und das war das Bild, das ich